Hi everyone, my name is Nate, and I would like to share with you today how I'm using Sutori in my history and individuals and societies classes, and hopefully give you some ideas for how you can use Sutori with practical applications for activities, assessments, and learning skills, as well as how you can organize yourself while using the app and engage with students. So my name is Nate Gildart. I'm based in Japan at Nagoya International School. I teach diploma program history as well as middle years program individuals and societies, kind of like social studies for those of you out of the IB program. And on the side, I am an educational technology consultant, and Sutori is one of the tools that I do present on fairly frequently. And as I said, I use practically in my own teaching practice. So, let's get to it. And towards the end, if you want to stick around, I'll give you a few ideas about some of the best practices you might want to think about when you're using this or any other digital storytelling tool. So one thing that I like to do with Satori is to organize everything that I make into categories that I find, work for me. The practice and the learning and the studying and teaching of history means we've got a whole wide range of different topics, and sometimes they don't all fit in nicely. So I always use the collections feature, which I think is a nice thing. So I'm going to start by showing the story of Christmas, seeing how Christmas is coming very soon for many people around the world. Um, what I like to do is give a little bit of background context to the story that we're teaching or the history that we're doing, and I like to use the forum so that my students can kind of brainstorm a little bit and think a bit about, what is this topic? What do I know about it? My version of a KWL chart, which you could actually make in another tool and embed it if you wanted to, like Google Jamboard or something like that. But what I like about the forum here in Satori is I've got a nice little image in here, and I can click on the comments after my students have filled in their comments and kind of see what background knowledge do they have, what do they really know about the topic, and that gives me a place to go or a starting point when I want to talk to them about the topic. So, for example, if there's a classroom activity where I want students to engage with a topic and something in history, such as this story of Christmas, I like to put primary source documents in, but I also like to put in very short videos from YouTube that I think help not only embellish but help them get a better understanding of the topic. And just to see that they're doing okay, I put these multiple choice, true or false, as well as the matching quizzes just so that they can test their knowledge in little chunks as they go through the reading. And I can test that, I can check that a little bit later, which I'll show you in a moment. So, here's a quiz, for example. If they want, they can comment on it, but they can take the quiz. And, I like that I can also give them the response so that they get to see the answer after they take the little mini, tests and quizzes. I like using the Did You Know feature just to throw in a few little anecdotes that are kind of interesting, but might not be something they necessarily have to keep in the back of their mind. So here's an example of a matching quiz that you can put in. And so, for example, the students would click on the prompt on the left and decide what the correct answer on the right is. And when it lights up in green, they've got it correct. And that gives them that instant feedback. And it is all random, so your students won't be looking at the person next to them. This is also good if they're working from home as well, right? And towards the end, I like to give students another forum. So now that you know more, what do you think? And then again, I can check their comments, and that might give me a starting point for further conversations or taking up what they did at the end of class or perhaps in the next class. Another thing that I like is you can embed, third-party apps, right? If you make something in another tool, you just have to put the link in, and students can actually look at that just by clicking out if it's a little bit too small, and it's just another way for students to engage with the material that they're working with. And of course, I always put my own bibliography in. When you are building these in Satori, there's an option to create a bibliography, and it puts it at the very bottom. Again, I display to my students academic honesty. Very important, I think. Now, here's an example of something I do with my students with the Cultural Revolution. And What I like to do with this is again have a forum in the beginning for students to kind of give me their background knowledge and get them thinking about the topic. And I like them to make predictions. Look at these images. What do you think is going on? Before we start our learning, I give them some primary sources, and in this case, photographs, where they can put comments in, or if they're taking notes within their notebooks, they can do that, and then we can come back and we can talk about these, and then I can have other media in the story so that they can kind of learn the history in that way. But putting predictions in the beginning, I think, is a good idea, and there's so much media online that you can use to do that. Now, we teach our students academic skills within the study of history. So I've decided to make a separate collection that students can use as a reference point. So rather than just a one-off activity, these are places students can go to learn the skills of history and go back to practice. So for example, one activity I do with students is trying to understand historiography. So within this collection about learning history, students can start with this activity um, where they look at different definitions of historiography, and in the forum at the top, they can comment on it, and then they can comment by giving their own definition as they've read through a number of definitions from a number of different sources. And finally, with this activity, I give them another forum where, okay, so now that you know more about what an historian does and what an historian should do, by looking at some videos that are further up in the Sutori, um, they judge what an historian should do, which is to seek the truth and be ethical, of course. Something else that I like is that you can embed files. So what I've done here is just taken a PDF with the schools of historical thought, and I've directly embedded it there. So students can now go in and they can make reference to schools of historical thought. And if I wanted, I can embed activities and things like that, such as this one with Flipgrid. So I've embedded this Flipgrid grid, fact, myth, misconception, or lie, to get students to extend their thinking about what an historian does and challenge our understanding of what history is, and where we've actually got it wrong in the past, but everybody thinks it might be the truth. So another example of where I have Sutori as a place where students can go to make reference is source analysis. How do you find the origin, purpose, and value and limitations of a source by using the content? Um, so this essentially is something students can engage with during a class activity, but they can come back to it later when they do future source analysis. This one's under development, but in the future I'll have images and text and videos that they can use for practice through activities here in this story. Now, something else that I like to do is connect the past to the present. And what I started doing was creating a collection of, learning and understanding history that we see in the news. Now, you could extend this to be talking about how did this event in the news connect with something we're studying in the past. But the examples I have here are how we're using textbooks in our schools, on how we learn and how we teach history, things that people are talking about now in the 21st century. And you note here too that I've got audio embedded. These come directly from news websites that give audio along with the text. So students can read the text by clicking the link, and I've got my source, or they can just listen to the audio, and you can upload an MP3. Many of these you can download from the source where you saw them, and of course, if you're giving your source and linking it, then you should be fine in terms of academic honesty. And it's great for those audio learners and kids that are struggling with reading. Now, I also have resources for teaching and learning academic skills. In history and social studies, students do note taking, and it's important that they learn different methods of note taking. So here's another one where I give a little bit of background, and then they do have a couple of forums, and I've even embedded a slide deck here where students can either pop through the slides or they can expand the screen. But I've just put the methods in here as well. So it's another place where students can come and reference the reasoning and the how-to when it comes to taking notes. Now, because all topics don't really fit into a nice category, I've created a collection just called Now That's Interesting. So here's one on the Black Death, for example. It has like my other, other stories. I've got quizzes and questions and prompts and that kind of thing. But what I've decided to put now that's interesting is also a Satori called The Joy of Reading. And I do want to encourage my students to read. So, what I've done is started this series of books that students might be interested in. I'm going to expand that to include articles as well. But this is a work in progress. And so I've got it broken down to quick and easy reads where you can read by chapter, books that I have myself at home and I do enjoy, as well as other books on learning history or maybe just certain topics in history, as well as government and politics and economics, because it's really hard to separate these topics from the study of history. So I'm making this collection of books, and you notice I've embedded the titles of the book and the author, as well as the thumbnail image. I didn't link where to buy them because everyone can choose where they prefer to buy their books themselves. But this is a way for me to encourage students to read more, but in my subject area. So here's another collection that really, it's actually connected to my classes and a club. So I've just called this one the United Nations. I'm a model United Nations Club supervisor, but I use these topics in my class as well. So Sustainable Development Goals is one that students can use for reference in my classes as well as in my club. Now, the way I've set up this tutorial on sustainable development goals is actually for teachers as well. Um, so I've given links on sustainable development goals and embedded videos and things like that, but I've also put in some classroom project ideas for teachers to use. And it's also a good reference point for me, so I can go back and it's like, oh yeah, what was that idea that I wanted for teaching sustainable development goals in the class? Whether it's assessment that's formative or summative or just for a class activity, I put some ideas for teachers in there as well. So it's not only just for my students. And another example of how you can embed, other third-party tools just with a simple link is this one on the story of the 47 Ronin. Again, you see the forum at the beginning, but what I want to highlight is this thing link, 360-degree um, basically story of the 47 Ronin, where students can engage in a different way um, using 360 imagery, which is kind of cool, I think. It just adds another layer of what students can do using story. And in this same Sutori that I built, I've also put in Google Maps because I do think it's important for students to understand where in the world today that we're talking about in our class. So just with a simple click, well, copy and paste the link to the map that you get from wherever you get your map, and then students can kind of look at where we're talking about in the world, which I think is pretty cool. And it's a nice, clean little square right there that gives them a little bit more context to what we're studying. Now, something else that I like is because students have an account with Satori, is that I can view the stats and see how my students are engaging with the Satori that I've used in a class. So I've got my general stats here, but I can look at the amount of time that students may have engaged, and I can also look at where they did okay and where they might be going wrong as a group with the quizzes, and then I can use that to inform me of what I have to review or go over later. And I can see who's commenting and how many times they've commented as well with each individual Satori that I use. This is good for formative and summative assessment. So good luck, enjoy building your Satoris, encourage your students to build their own ones as well so they can get that authentic audience and share their learning with other people.